Columbia Morning on News Talk 1400 KFRU. We have had an opportunity to talk in the past and do so again. Look forward to it this year with a trauma specialist from MU Healthcare, Dr. Jeffrey Litt, who also does surgical of critical care. We were talking off the air about what kind of things he sees as he treats people for trauma, and we're going to talk specifically with the 4th of July, now less than a week away, of those kinds of injuries, but I was asking about water-related trauma events as well as burn-related trauma events, and you see probably about an equal number of each, huh?
We do tend to see a fair handful of transfers from down in the lake who fall off boats or on water scooters or whatnot that injure themselves, sometimes quite severely, and we've even had a few fatalities. That being said, it is summer. People like bonfires, and of course this coming week and probably the week after and maybe the week after that too. People do like lighting their explosives as well.
So let's talk about fireworks and what that might mean for those of you in the trauma section of MU Healthcare. Can you estimate a number or guesstimate a number of cases that you might on a typical year see?
So we see plus or minus a dozen every year, and it's not just on July 4th. It's the couple days before, a couple days after, upwards to a week or two afterwards, where people have been injured on the 4th and then waited a little bit before they come in.
You mentioned sometimes campfires, or let's roast some hot dogs with a family gathering, or let's light the grill. How many of the injuries that you're likely to see during the next week to 2 weeks would be firework related, and how many would be related to, well, this charcoal's not getting ready quick enough, I think I'll throw some gas on it?
So things like that are fairly constant. We'll see that most months of the year, even in the winter when people burn off their burn piles and their trash pile and their brush and so on. People like using their accelerant on something that burns anyway, which, not being a farmer, I don't quite get, but that's okay. We're here to take care of them, and we're happy to do so, and we try to maximize their outcomes and make sure that they can get back to the lives that they're used to living. The fireworks, of course, go up this next couple weeks.
How bad does it have to be? See, again, I think you've talked about this in the past, and I think I probably heard this in the past, but explain to me again, please. In order to reach trauma level burn, what is that?
And so there's an association for burn professionals called the American Burn Association. There's a series of criteria that they have put out that centers should generally refer to as being referral criteria to a burn or trauma center. Those burns are greater than 10% of your body, and if you think of your arm as about 9%, that would give you a basic idea of what 10% might look like in an adult. Numbers change for kids and more so even for infants. Any third-degree burn, any electrical burn, any chemical burn, any burn where there's a concern where you breathe in some smoke and then can damage your lungs. These are all sort of trauma referral criteria. Of course, there's other criteria as well, a burn plus something else that's a trauma. So you crash your car, a car catches on fire, but you also broke your femur or ruptured your spleen or something. These are all potential trauma criteria.
What do you do for inhaled? I mean, I hadn't thought of that. I've never asked you that question, but you inhale chemicals or inhale smoke or something like that. How do you treat that?
You basically wait for the damage to occur, support the patient until the damage resolves itself, which typically starts really manifesting about 2 or 3 days after the initial insult. So someone could come in after being in a house fire, breathe in a lot of toxic plastics burning and things like that that can really damage the lung cells. They look good for a day or two, and then all of a sudden their respiratory status goes down very precipitously, and they need to be supported typically on a ventilator for a period of time. Specific medication regimen is what to help kind of clear away some of those dead cells, and eventually the lungs do tend to recover. But it's supportive. There isn't anything that we can do to stop the process.
I think anybody who's paid attention to some news over the last couple of weeks knows of what's been happening in regard to continuing assistance to those who breathed in a whole lot of unsafe chemicals during the terrorist attacks of September 11th of 2001. And I'm not trying to take us that direction, but I mean, that is a pretty graphic evidence of what the danger can be when you've breathed in rather than had that something that happened to destroy skin.
Yeah, I've taken care of during my training folks who have had critical care, been on the ventilator for a long period of time without any skin burns. They've just breathed in smoke. They passed out in a burning building and had such a profound lung injury that they were critically ill for weeks on end. So it is very real possibility.
The fireworks injuries that you're going to see, and I mean, we say this as if it's a certainty, and it is a certainty. You're going to see a half dozen to a dozen firework injuries.
Absolutely. And I'd like not to, and I'd love to report next year that this is the year that our talk and some of the other things that are being promoted out there did the job, but we're people, and people make accidents, and fireworks accidents are just that. They're accidents.
They're preventable. I mean, you don't have to have this.
No, you don't. There are things you can do to maximize your safety while still having fun. Probably the best thing that you could do is just go to see one of the big public shows, which are going to be a better fireworks display anyway, and it's certainly going to be a whole lot safer.
And cheaper.
And a whole lot cheaper since they're free. Certainly not letting children anywhere near where fireworks are being lit, at least a 6 to 8 foot area where there's just no children involved, just like you wouldn't allow your child in the kitchen while you're cooking for fear of spilling something on them. You do the same thing with fireworks, which can also explode and burn. Nobody who's lighting fireworks should be drinking. You should have a designated lighter, quote unquote. That way it can maintain a level of safety. I believe that children shouldn't be handling fireworks of any kind, even sparklers.
I was going to ask you about sparklers.
I had sparklers as a kid. I loved them. And if I had the opportunity as a kid to have a bottle rocket fight, I would have. But at this stage of the game, there's no way my kids do any of that. And I certainly I encourage my neighbors and other folks to not let kids play with sparklers. They're the hottest firework out there, at least commercially available, not professionally. They get upwards of 2,000 degrees, and they can cause an instantaneous third-degree burn.
You've told me that before. They're the hottest firework out there, but it's the one that many of us would say, if you're going to say, well, what do you want your kids to do? Well, give them a sparkler.
Well, they think because it doesn't explode and because it's likely not to catch you on fire, per se, it seems safer. But you grab it wrong, or, one year I took care of a person who held a bunch of them together thinking that they'd just light up brighter, and it exploded in that person's hand. Causing pretty severe palm burns. These things can happen, and I don't know what the process is for manufacturing them. I don't know the safety controls, and I don't know how many of them are even made in the States. So there's all these variables that can control whether or not you're going to get injured, and the best thing to do is just not put yourself in that position.
Burns are painful. Burns are serious, and as I was. When we scheduled this segment, I was told that there is a new FDA-approved spray-on skin for certain type of burn patients. What's that?
There is. People think of it as a skin gun. That was on Facebook and social media a year and a half ago. This is a cousin of that. It took a little longer for FDA approval, although the technology's been around longer. It's taking a very small piece of skin while you're already in the operating room, cleaning up the burns and removing the dead skin and stuff, and putting it through a process that comes as a kit, basically, that separates all the skin cells from the underlying tissue. And then if you make a solution out of it, you can actually spray it on a wound bed that would be ready for a skin graft anyway. And those skin cells act like they're a skin graft, except they're a solution.
Well, how about that?
And
it starts with something that you've taken from the patient's own skin.
It is, but it's a much smaller, quote, donor site than you would if you were trying to cover that with just straight moving skin from one area to another. It's we call it expansion. It's a much larger expansion ratio. It's about an 80 times expansion ratio. One of the kits, which takes about 1.5 inch cubes of skin, can cover about 2,000 square centimeters, or several body surface area feet.
Does it heal faster?
It doesn't heal faster, but it heals as well, and it seems to actually maybe heal better in some respects in terms of pigmentation, because you're moving some of those cells that create our pigmentation as well, rather than them being stuck in the skin. They can kind of migrate out.
Does it work on all parts of the body equally?
We're still discovering.
Let me go. Caller, do you have a question or comment for Dr. Litt before I let him go?
You may have spoke of this. Do you use certain types of Australian or New Zealand honeys for burn healing?
Thanks for the call. I think we got this question a year or so ago, didn't we?
I think we did. Yeah, there is a New Zealand honey called Manuka honey, and it can be medically processed, so it's essentially sterile and used for various wound care regimens, including to some degree some burn care. There's specialized moments where I decide I would use some of this Manuka honey, this medical grade Manuka honey. But honey itself is very antibacterial and actually has been used in wound care for thousands of years at this point.
Anything else you want to leave us with? I mean, your advice is good. The concerns are well placed. It just would be wonderful if people didn't see you over the holiday.
Yeah, surprise me. Don't come in as a fireworks injury. Have water nearby. Don't relight anything. Don't try to relight a dud. And again, don't let kids play with stuff, please.
Keep the kids away. Let the professionals do it. Enjoy some of the big shows that'll be, especially like Fire in the Sky next Thursday night out at Flat Branch Park in that area there, like it's been the last few years. That's a great show. You can get some music and other things going on there, and you don't have to spring for any cost unless you buy some food at some of the food trucks.
Yeah.
Well, Doctor, I hope it's a hope it's a less busy 4th of July.
Well, as do I. We'll report on that next year.
And we'll do so. Thank you.
Right,
Dr. Jeff Litt with trauma from MU Healthcare, giving us some good advice and warnings about not being somebody who will see him over the 4th of July holiday or any time of the summer with especially with the burns that we're concerned about. It's News Talk 1400 KFRU.